Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Patriarch coming to you live from the Great White North of Alaska. See that we're don't have any viewers yet. That's fine. If you are new to the stream and you enjoy the sort of stuff we do around here, please give a like, subscribe, and you may also support the show through links to Subscribestar or PayPal. Links can be found below. We're going to get started now, and we're going to start off with a little something to set the tone. Here we go.
Goodbye, das Vidania. The magic's gone, thanks to you. So long, time to show you consequence for your game. And I hope I never see your face again. Don't wanna be in this place again. And I hope I never see your face again. Don't wanna be in this place again. Get lost, I'll disown ya. Here's some change. Take the bus. Go far, far away. I don't care. Hurry up. And I hope I never see your face again. Don't wanna be in this place again. And I hope I never see your face again. Don't wanna be in this place again. Goodbye, sayonara, towards the sun is where I'll go. And I hope I never see your face again. Don't wanna be in this place again. And I hope I never see your face again. Don't wanna be in this place again.
Okay, that was I Hope I Never See Your Face Again by Desmond Doom. Link can be found in the description. That's just a new song that I thought was fitting for tonight based on sort of the topic we're talking about. Letting go, the art of saying goodbye. I see that I'm listed as a journalist disrespecter. That is from the last stream. Let me erase that real quick. Okay, there we go. So thanks for stopping by. There's been a bit of comments coming in from other content creators and other people who are subscribed to the stream, wondering if I'm ending the show. I am not, in fact, ending the show. I will keep going on. I don't believe I will be stopping anytime in the immediate future. I do not have plans to. This is more abstract, let us say. It is the art of saying goodbye writ large as a way of dealing with loss and saying farewell to things and even people that we, once upon a time loved or were close to, or things, institutions, ideas that we respected or looked up to, and unfortunately have to put down. From dyslexic generator, I'm good at saying goodbye. However, I'm very bad at forgetting. Yep. Don't look back. You can never go back. Indeed. If you guys have any comments or anything that you'd like to say specifically to me, you're welcome to send a super chat. Financial support is always appreciated. So we've got some people here now. We've got 12 Chads in the audience. Very good. So what prompted this stream? So as you guys know, I have not been making a lot of, I'm just laughing at a comment. I'm not looking at the comments. I am, what's the word? I am not following the news cycle and making political takes. I am also somewhat disillusioned with a lot of metapolitical stuff, and, things of that nature. Not that I don't think that's important, but I think a lot of that stuff has already been said. And where I'm at now with the channel is things that I think are important, which catch me in the moment, and I think are could be of benefit to the audience. Those are the things that I want to talk about. And this one is on the art of saying goodbye. And this was prompted actually by a viral YouTube video. So as some of you may know, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm a fan of music. I will occasionally post videos of me singing, playing guitar or bass. And I've been doing that for quite a long time. Back in high school, I was in my first band, and it was first it was a cover band, and then I joined a band with two of my best friends. We played original thrash metal. It was great. So I saw a video on YouTube that sparked the idea, the inspiration for this stream. And it's only 55 seconds, and I'm going to play it now. I want you to watch this. And then after you've watched this, I want you to tell me in the comments if you have any feelings. Do you feel anything? Here we go. Okay. So that was a video called This Disgusting Beautiful Tone. And it was interesting because it was on a channel that doesn't have a bajillion followers or anything. It was a guy who played just those guitar riffs. And it went viral. There was 1.9 million people who watched that video. And I'm going to give you my thoughts here in a second, but I want to see if there's anybody in the audience who has anything to say. Here, close. Looking through. Sounds like Sonic Youth a little bit with the drone notes and the sad. That kind of melancholic, but also hopefully in happy remembering. Takes me back to year 6. There we go. Definitely some early 2000s pop rock themes about love or something. Yes. So you guys are kind of getting it. You're picking up on it. So I think the reason why this video went viral and why it inspired this video is that it basically slammed into the brain of the millennial mind like an ice pick. That's basically what happened. Here we go. It reminds me of being 17 when I thought losing a high school GF was the end of the world. Funny how serious it was back then. Yes, you are exactly the sort of person who watched this video. And if you look at the comments on this video, it's totally hilarious. There's it's just comment after comment of, YouTube person saying how it immediately made them feel nostalgic, how they're imagining, sort of like an early mid 2000s teen movie where they break up. Or one of the funnier ones was a guy who commented, "And that's how I survived high school." Hit credits, and then that song plays. My mind gave me a montage of all the faces I used to know, times we spent in the abstract. Absolutely. This is the power of that video is it's able to communicate what Langton Industries is pointing out right here. Yes. And it's a really funny thing. And that's what watching that video is what prompted this stream for the same reasons. Again, bringing up Langton's comment, the montage of faces I used to know being the key word. And like I said, it slammed into the millennial mind like an ice pick. You feel a part of your life is well and truly over when you listen to this. But you also remember the good times. You remember people that you used to know. And you remember just so many things that are gone and past. And that particular sound, I think, is resonant with the millennial audience. You can feel that, like I said, a part of your life is well and truly over in a way that I don't think would affect everybody. So if I showed this to a Zoomer, for example, they don't really get it, right? Because that type of sound of music was not for them, right? It was for the millennials. And the type of movies it would be in, same story. Here we go. My Zoomer brain fails to grasp this magic wordiness. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay, Mr. Anxiety Floppa. We love you anyways. So, what is the power of this and why does it affect us? It's because we know subconsciously, I think, on a spiritual level, I'll say on a spiritual level, that we have moved to a point in our lives where we have let things go and we're sad about it. But we were happy when they existed, is the thing. I just see a comment here. Slayer P3. So you're done doing political topics and moving to more music stuff. What was the original purpose of this channel? I'm pretty new here initially. Just found you and coincidentally you're live. Yeah. So I will still do metapolitical stuff. I do want to finish my Reflections of a Russian Statesman thing, even though the inspiration is sapped and fled my body. But I will still do metapolitical stuff. But it's just harder unless it's, how do I say, inspired by something. And this is kind of what I'm going to talk about a little bit in this stream. So let me tell you, sort of give you a little story about myself and my first girlfriend. To bring up, who was it? That was this great comment. Oh yeah, from Brennan Cooney. So I'm going to tell you about my first girlfriend. So I'm going to say her name was Stacy because I'm a Chad, obviously. So Stacy was my first girlfriend. And I really, really liked Stacy. We spent a lot of time together. We had visions of where we wanted to go in our life. We wanted to get married. We wanted to have kids someday. I doted on Stacy, and the PUA observer of my relationship life could see where I would make a bajillion mistakes. I was not as based now as I was then, let us say. And one of the unfortunate things with growing up in the age we do is there's not a lot of training for young men on how to woo a female, right? And Stacy and I were close. We were in high school together. She started writing me during AP biology, and then I'd write her a note. And we had this back and forth thing where we're sending each other's letters. And then eventually we became boyfriend and girlfriend. We went to prom together, and then we went to university. And then after that first year of university, we were still together. And in the summer, we come back, we're together, and then she breaks up with me the next semester. So that would be, or was it? I can't even remember now. It's been so long. It might have been the second semester of college that I was cast aside, and it devastated me. I felt like I'd never find someone who, loved me again. And, she was the one, and it was awful. It was terrible. And it literally took me probably a few years, 3 or 4 years, to get over Stacy. Because I was so invested in this person and this vision that I had for my life. I even tried to get back with her at a later date, and that didn't go so well. But, I was young, I was dumb. I still loved this ghost of a person and, what I hoped our life would be, right? It took a lot of time to get over it. Now, how did I get over it? It's the question. Basically, spiritual acceptance. And that's true with everything, not just relationships. There was a really good talk, maybe I think it was last weekend, where we had a visiting monk, an abbot from a monastery, come up and give a talk to us, and from an Orthodox monastery. And one of the things he talked about was saying, okay. When life gives you lemons, you say okay. When God asks you to do something, you say okay. When you lose that first high school GF and you're crying at night and it's eating up your heart, you say okay. When your government is pushing whatever trans ideology or starting foreign wars or betraying the original concept of what it meant to be an American, you say okay. And it's not that you're cool with the bad stuff, but you realize that you can, through accepting it as reality and leaning on God, you're able to move on. And not only that, you're not only able to move on, but you're able to see the opportunity in just acceptance, right? So this is the key, and this is the I think this is the important thing for us now, is learning how to say goodbye with that okay mindset that the monk was telling us about. We're allowed to mourn. We're allowed to be sad. There's a lot of bad things that happen in life. And to, tell somebody not to be upset about it is not only correct, but absolutely contrary to human nature. The Bible says Jesus wept, right? So even the Lord himself was sad at one point, right? And he probably still gets sad today. He probably sees me messing up and he's like, oh, Mr. Patriarch, come on, man. You're better than this. It's okay to mourn. Bad things happen, And if I look at my life over the past year, I've had some troubles, I moved back to Alaska in, February of 2022. And I thought my family would be here a lot sooner because of stuff that I read on the, what was it? What was it called? Department of Immigration and Citizen Services. That was not the case. I've had to wait. It's been over a year now. And in that time, my second son has been born. And he's going to be a year old at the end of next month. And in that time, I've been with him for a period of around 4 weeks over the course of the year. I mean, that's sad. I missed the first year of my son's life. That's sad. I'm going to miss his first birthday. That's also sad. I miss my wife. I miss the intimacy that we had. I miss just watching something on TV, even if it was dumb, and just sort of staying, just being with her while the kids were asleep. I miss going on a long drive after work, spur of the moment. I really like to do that. And just having time for us. Of course, there's the carnal, intimate aspect, which I definitely miss. And I miss my eldest son. He's 3 years old now. And all the funny stuff he does. And, I can video call him and, he's excited and he's like, hi, Dada, but it's just not the same. And that's something that I can be sad about. But once the initial sadness is over, I have to say, okay. I have to say, all right, okay, where do we go now? And when you say goodbye and let go of things, obviously I'm not letting go of my family, but I'm letting go of the pain. I'm letting go of the anxiety. I'm letting go of these things so that I can live. And what are the things that you are saying goodbye to, dear listener? Type that in the comment. Go ahead. What are the things that you are saying goodbye to? You can leave a little note for me. I'll read it, but we can talk about it. My springboard conversation. So my first GF, Stacy, I had to say goodbye to her. That's one thing that many of us can, or if you're a hapless Zoomer who's terminally online, maybe you've never had a GF, you've had to say goodbye to something, right? What are the things we're saying goodbye to today? Or have had to say goodbye over the course of our lives? Right now, I would say some ideas. America, saying goodbye to America. What America meant when it was founded, the ideas that we had of what America was, and what it promised to us, and what it has betrayed. Not failed to deliver. That's a different matter. Because, you could live in the best country in the world, but there can be circumstances that make it implausible for them to, make good on what they had hoped to make. This is a very different matter in the United States. The American state, the regime, has thoroughly betrayed what this country was envisioned as. And I don't think there's anybody in my audience who would disagree with that. We've also had to say goodbye to boyish things, right? I don't play as much video games as I used to. Why? It's not because I don't like video games. I do like video games. It's because I'm a husband and a father of 2 kids. And I have a job and I'm busy. And there's just things that I have to put by the wayside. That's a different category of things that I have to put away. Now, if you're politically active and based, you may have to say goodbye to spurgy ideologies, right? And when I started this channel, I was like really into ideology. And even before, I was really into ideology. That's why I was, an anarcho-capitalist for as long as I was. I was enamored with these ideas. I was enamored with the idea of creating a system or believing in a system that had all the answers, and that if only we followed it, things would be great, right? And it doesn't matter what ideology it is. If it's communism, if it's democratism, if it's fascism, if it's whatever. These ideologies are a millstone around your neck. I'll say it. It's not something that is, it's not something that's all that helpful, simply put. It can have good critiques, and it's important to study ideologies, I think. I studied history in university, and, I studied ideologies, and I think I learned something from it. I learned how different people envision power and what it can be used for. But accepting an ideology and being enslaved to it and trying to fit the world as it exists in real life into your ideology and interpreting, goings on through ideology is a mistake. Resentments. You have to say goodbye to resentments. Destructive emotions. Resentments and destructive emotions. These things can literally kill you, by the way, holding on to resentments and destructive emotions. That's why people become alcoholics and heroin addicts. That's why, even people who don't fall into drugs, you see studies of people who are really bitter and whatnot. And typically they don't last very long. They have a short expiration date. Habits. Some habits we have to say goodbye to. So for me, smoking. I like smoking. I had 2 cigarettes before I started this stream and a double shot of Jameson. And I enjoy my smoking, but I have to say goodbye to it. Why? Because it's time to say goodbye to it. I made a promise to my wife and to myself before I told my wife that by the time my kids were old enough to get what's going on, in the real world, I'd give up smoking cigarettes because I don't want my sons to think that's an okay thing to do. And yeah, so I'm going to have to say goodbye to it. Same reason I said goodbye to video games and whatever, or as many video games as I used to play. I still enjoy Mario from time to time. Friends. This is a hard one. You have to say goodbye to friends. There's people in my life who on a time were very close to me and who I thought of as brothers. And through the tides of life, I've had to say goodbye to those people. Not specifically over, it's not like all my friends were progressive shit libs or anything, and I had to be like, yeah, I can't be friends with you anymore. That's not what the issue is. The issue was the trajectory of my life and the spiritual orientation and what I wanted to build and in my own life and see in the communities around me was at odds with their vision. People drift away, and a lot of it, some of it's due to circumstance, but I have other friends who, I've managed to stay close to, who I've drifted away from, and physically, but I still keep in touch with. But some other ones didn't make the cut. I've had to say goodbye to them. That's not nice. It's not fun, but makes me sad. I listen to that song at the beginning and I feel sentimental. I'm like, man, I wish I was still friends with so-and-so. I wish we still had the connection that we used to have. I wish I didn't have to force, interactions with them, with this person. But that's just, unfortunately, sadly, part of life. YouTube channels and clout chasing. People have to say goodbye to those, or should say goodbye to those, maybe. There may come a day, in fact, there probably will come a day at some point in time where I'm going to move on from this and go on to something else, whether I'm too busy, caught up in business or work, planning on starting a business with my brother. There's times where we have to say goodbye to things that once inspired and really gave us a sense of fulfillment, even if it's not monetary. Like with this channel, the reason I still do it is because it does give me a certain sense of fulfillment. I like talking to you guys. I like communicating what wisdom I can. Well, you can judge for yourself how good that is or not. But I like the community that I've developed around this channel and the people that I've known, other content creators, Prudentialist, Academic Agent, Charlemagne, Market Spherist, Pertinax, Apostolic Majesty. These are all people who make stuff on YouTube who I respect and who I like to interact with and have the private Telegram group or a private Twitter group chat for. That's great. But someday it may be time to put that down. I don't know. That is a network and connection that the Lord has put in my life, which I am embracing. But I don't know what the future holds. So there's a lot we give up. There's a lot that we have to say goodbye to. There's a lot of people we have to say goodbye to. There's a lot of ideas and things and pastimes that we have to say goodbye to. There's countries that once existed, like I was saying with the United States, that we have to say goodbye to. And it hurts. It all hurts. Which is why I included those two little song clips in the show. But why do we have to say goodbye to them? Why do we have to say goodbye to them? We say goodbye to them so that we can live again. We say goodbye to them so that we can live again and live more fully. What does that mean? It's an interesting question. Why do we let go from things? Why do we have to say goodbye? Why can't we just hold on to all these things and all these people and these relationships? And why can't we carry all these things in the future? Even when they may have hurt us on a time, so that we can live again. And what does that mean? That means being open to the things that, I'm gonna get spiritual here. It means being open to the things that God has put in our path, in our life, for our benefit, for our salvation, and for the salvation of others, to make our little corner of the world a better place. It means realizing that we have a responsibility to live authentically in accordance with the divine plan, so that we may truly live, so that we may truly love the people in our life today, right now, who need us. It means accepting the burden of responsibility to shoulder the load and to try to build something which glorifies God, our family, and our ancestors, the people who brought us here. Saying goodbye is very important. And saying goodbye to the America we thought we knew, saying goodbye to the people that we on a time loved or were close to, saying goodbye to ideologies that used to animate us, to pastimes that brought excitement and joy to our lives. Saying goodbye to these things is necessary so that we can truly live and truly serve today. And that's going to look different for every individual person. I can't say what that means to you, but that's why we are asked to say goodbye. That's why we have to say, okay, even when it hurts, so that you can look around yourself and see a wall that needs to be built, see a person who needs love, see a neighbor who needs a hand, see that community organization which needs to be built, see that task which is not being completed, see that need which is being underserved, and to shoulder the load and do it. All right, that's about all I have for today. I'm going to go through the comments now. And then I'll end it. That's about it. The millennials are the boomers of today now. Maybe. We don't own as much stuff as the boomers, though. That's what I admire about Mr. Patriarch's work is the variety of topics he covers. Appreciate that, Marshall Forward. And some people don't like it, and I get it. There's tons of channels like Prudentialist. He's really focused on, geopolitics and political happenings and stuff, but I'm more of an eclectic guy. And I'm not as invested in making the YouTube channel work, if I can use that terminology. He's doing very important work, and he's really focused, and I wish him all the success. I'd love for him to be able to make that full time if that's something he wants. But I feel like my specific role is to be somebody else, let's say. First cut is the deepest, as they say. Absolutely true. Stacy's mom has got it going on. Damn, this indeed is a nostalgia stream, man. Yep. But this is the thing. So nostalgia is an emotion, which I said is sort of tied to the mourning, the happiness, and the letting go, the art of saying goodbye, right? So you can mourn those things. You have to let them go. But yeah. Timely stream. Thank you, Northern Observer. LinkedIn Industries, Banana Donut. So true. So true. Childhood. Sanity overrate. Not sure what that means. Family starting a new life across the country. Across the world in my case. But yeah, across this country in your case. It's tough. It's tough. Childhood innocence. That's another thing we have to say goodbye to. Good philosophical question to ask. I'll certainly ponder this throughout the coming days. Happy to hear it. Farewell. I assume that was a typo for farewell. Yes. I don't even recognize the America of today. It's definitely not the America I remember. 100%. And I grew up in a conservative red state where I thought America was a certain thing, and I took pride in it, and I loved it. I'm not that old, but even in my own lifetime, I've seen the transformation, and it was very sad to be disillusioned of that. It's not a good feeling, but we do have to say goodbye to it. We do have to have that, okay, Lord, okay, mindset so that we can figure out what to do. Based, appreciate that. Former libertarian checking in here. Likewise. Were you a hardcore libertarian? Yes, I was a libertarian and an anarcho-capitalist for a number of years. And I had to say goodbye to that too, for the reasons that I've outlined. Super chat coming in from Prince of Parma. Most of this, as the South Africa-Alaska divide is real in my case as well. Bro, are you in Alaska? If you are, we definitely have to meet up sometime. You can leave a comment, and if you are, then I'll read it. But yeah. Let's go back up. Music might actually be the most personally intimate form of art after all. I might say that. I think other people are affected by different forms of art in different ways. Mr. D, for instance, is very much affected by the physical arts, which is good. I've always had music speak more closely to my soul, though, than visual art, although I am still moved by visual arts. Say goodbye to Australia 2 years ago. Very sad to hear that. Even made a video about it. One has no idea how much they hold until he starts letting go. Yep, that's right. Yeah, and fortunately, I haven't had to do that with my state, but I've had to do that with my country, which doesn't make me feel good, to be honest. I think there's a lot of people who hate the regime, and rightfully so, perhaps. I certainly do not like the regime. But I think there's an understated importance on appreciating what this country used to be and being sad that it's not that anymore. That it's transformed into this deformed, godless, satanic institution, at least at the federal level. And realizing that and saying goodbye to the America that was is it's not nice, but it's necessary so that you can live, truly live. America is an artificial mutt nation. Disagree. Well, okay. It's not actually a nation, and it's never really been a nation in like the European sense. It's been a confederation of states. And I think that's a better way to look at it. Certain states were nations in and of themselves, joined in a union, right? For mutual benefit. So, yeah, there is no American nation. There's an American mindset and nations within America. And that's how I respond to that. Forgiveness is very good for you, 100%. Breaking the Habits by Linkin Park. Okay. I don't know that song. God, I love the Siggies. Yes, so do I. But I must say goodbye to the Siggies, as I mentioned. From SP, same dude, easier said than done. I smoked weed to the craziest extent possible, but bye-bye to that shit. Yep. Goodbye. Goodbye, weed. And you can miss weed, but you have to say goodbye. Yeah, damn, man, I miss that nicotine. Indeed. God forgives you through Jesus Christ. So who are you to not forgive yourself? This is a very important thing. And with probably zero exceptions, there is not a man based today who was not cringe, right? And in that cringe state, we make many mistakes and do many things that we are ashamed of later on. If I think about my relationship with Stacy, there's a lot of cringe things that I did. But the good news is, and the importance of letting go, of saying okay, the art of saying goodbye. is that it allowed me to live again. And then I was able to meet my current wife, Mrs. Patriarch. I had a couple of girlfriends after Stacy, but met my wife, Mrs. Patriarch, who's way hotter than Stacy, by the way, and way easier to live with, way more feminine, way more spiritually aligned with myself, and who has given me two beautiful children. If I had not said goodbye to Stacy, I would not. If I was just the guy who was dating the one who got away and I never got over it, I would not have the amazing marriage with the amazing, beautiful woman who has enriched my life beyond measure if I didn't say okay, basically. So forgive yourself, say okay, I have to say goodbye, and then you'll know what to do. Forgive yourself and others, very important. Forgive yourself for your own sake, and then you'll learn to forgive them for their sakes. Very important. Ha, friends, what friends? Very sad to hear that, Mr. Zoomer. I believe you said you were a Zoomer. Very sad to hear that. Maybe I'll have a stream on friendship. Goodbye to romance, Ozzy. Yes. Pretty much all my friends from college ended up shit libs, nearly killed me. Sad to say that. Sad to say that. I've had, I don't know if they're shit libs, but just kind of like centrist types is how I would describe it. I have a couple of friends who are like that, and it's disappointing. And some of those people I'm no longer friends with, but I think it's less to do with the politics and more than just the life and worldview. Like I want to be friends with, based Christian patriarchs. Some of your friends unfortunately pass away abruptly. No, none of my friends have passed away abruptly, although my father-in-law did right before I moved up here, which was very sad. And that's another thing. And also, okay, tangent related to this comment. This is one of the things where saying okay, saying goodbye can actually lead to good things. This is a case study. It's my life. So when I was married at the end of 2016, and I was still up here, and we're going to immigrate my wife to Alaska. She ended up getting bone cancer. Not good. So I closed up shop up here. I put my career on pause. I shut down my summer business. And then I moved to South Africa. And I had to say goodbye to Alaska. I had to say goodbye to my friends. I had to say goodbye to my families because duty called to say goodbye. And then I moved to South Africa for my wife's treatment. Once her treatment was over, it took about 6 months. We wanted to be close to her doctors and her family. And I started working there. And then I made amazing friends. I got very close to my in-laws. I came to love them as my own family. But then we decided to move back to Alaska. She was pregnant with our second child. And a week before we were scheduled to move back to Alaska, my father-in-law passed away. He died. And we were there with him when he passed away. And I think about, on the topic of this stream, how much of a blessing that cancer was. how much of a blessing saying goodbye to my home and everybody I knew and, my life, my career, how much of a blessing that was to be there in that moment with my wife so that she could be with her father as he breathed his last breaths, so that I had the chance, the privilege of coming to love him and be accepted in the family and have those years of experience with him because my wife got cancer and I had to say goodbye to everything that I knew. I lived more in those 5 years than probably any other previous 5 years. Definitely any other, probably, definitely any other previous 5 years. And that's where the Lord needed me then. And it was sad initially when I had to leave, but what a blessing that was. And so too, if we can think of where we're at right now in this current political paradigm, the old America is dead. It's gone. It exists in pockets, but so far as at the top, at the federal level, it's gone. It's dead. It's a ghost. And we have to say goodbye to it. But on the back end of that, it's not impossible that we'll be blessed by what is to come. If only we are able to say goodbye to the past, quit holding on to it, and shoulder the load that we're called to. And what that means for you personally, I don't know. I kind of know what it means in my own life. But that's for you to decide and for you to discern for yourself. I can tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean, just spinning around and spiraling at the news cycle. That's not it. That is not it. But anyways, where I had a friendship end, they tended to fade as life changed, all natural. Yep. But it's still kind of sad. During the pandemic, all my college friendships went poof. Maybe you're too busy with your family. Maybe. Being with family is more important. Brother Augustine. Indeed. Speaking of, I'd love to hear from Brother Augustine again. Maybe I'll do another Orthodox council with him and Prudentialist, see how he's doing. Never say goodbye, just preparing for the next hello. Based. Rip apart and it regrows. Only rend and redo. Other side. South Africa most of the time. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but that would be cool. Alaska Brewery meetup when? That is an excellent question. I don't know if any of my audience lives in Alaska. I know that Lobster used to live in Alaska. I know that Grant from Contra Gentiles, who was on the show, is up here, and I've met with him IRL a number of times. But if you're up here in Alaska, leave a comment and I'll find you. I'll read these comments and I'll try to meet with you because, yeah, we need each other, man. Oh, extra super chats. Amazing. From Marshall Ford, great to see you stream it again, brother. God bless. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Learning to code has been the best and worst thing I have done in my life. Okay. Cool. Or a post. Do we have an obligation to forgive those who are perceptively evil? How does that look? That is a very good question. So I was, it's funny you say this. I was just listening to something before I began this stream on turning the other cheek and the difference between a private enemy and a public enemy. The private enemy, we are called to forgive. So we're called to sort of forgive everybody, but when we have someone in our own lives who is a problem, contentious, etc., we are called to forgive them. That is very clear from the scriptures. Now, a public enemy, somebody who is at odds with the public, who is seeking to undermine and destroy that which we hold dear, they must be judged because they're a danger to everybody. But forgiving them in your heart, or sort of having an okay attitude about it, and not okay as in what they're doing is fine, but just trying to keep the anger down for the sake of justice, not condemning them to hell. I think that's the important thing. Look at somebody like, pick your favorite globalist or person who's sold out your country or whatever. It's right and proper that they should be held accountable and made to pay for their crimes. Right? We're not pacifists. I'm not. But do you hope that person goes to hell or heaven? If you hope they go to hell, then I think that's an issue. I think that's what it looks like. It's that you realize that somebody, for what they've done, may deserve to lose their life, and that it is just that they lose it, for example, like whatever, like a criminal or whatever. But you hope for their salvation. You hope that either through our prayers or through God's mercy or through a turning of heart before the end, that they're able to find salvation and repent, to turn away in the last moments from what they were doing. I think that's a good benchmark for that sort of thing. So the obligation is justice, differentiating between private and public enemies, and for those who deserve, the noose, let us say, hoping that, not harboring bitter and angerness in your heart, and hoping that they are able to, in the last, at the end, be redeemed. I think that's how I'd think about it. Goodbye, Mr. Floppa. Oh, yo. Would you have Thomas 777 on the channel? I read Steelstorm after reading your review. Great read, by the way. Almost reminded me of Dune. Yeah, I would have Thomas on my channel, but I'm not exactly sure what we talk about. I might invite him on. He's a busy guy nowadays and high demand, but perhaps I'll have him on. Yeah. Let's going through the comments here. Oh, we are joined by Marcus Furious Pertinax, friend of the show. How are you doing?
Good morning, Mr. Patriarch. I thought I'd just chime in and say hello. I saw your kind invite, so I thought I'd give you on the stream a little bit of company for at least a little while.
Yeah, happy to have you here, man. Yeah, I'm just getting ready to wind down, but you caught us right at the end there. So, but we can springboard a little bit of a conversation here at the end. So I do have a super chat I would like for you to give your take on. So this is from Oro Post. Do we have an obligation to forgive those who are perceptively evil? How does that look? Your thoughts, sir?
I may or may not be the right person to ask about this question because but I'm happy to shed a little bit of light on this because you might say I used to be too far the one way when I was younger and rather more naive, and I actually used to be a rather more sensitive person than I am now. In fact, I was almost timid as a child, actually. Um, and then when I hit high school and I had to learn that men establish hierarchy, or boys establish hierarchy in very particular ways, and I actually took up boxing and martial arts when I was in high school, and I really came to understand that if a man wants to protect himself, he has to do so not only figuratively but also literally. And then moving on through life, just having seen what we've seen as things have transpired, throughout the 2000s and the 2010s and so on, we've rather become cynical. And you might say that there are many of us, and I might be a touch on you, Patriarch, but I got a feeling we're sort of similar generation-wise, and we've sort of seen the same things in the same period of time. That when you think, oh well, these people are just silly, and how could they vote for Obama, and how could they, vote for the ANC, and surely this is just ignorance, and they're a bit misguided and whatever. People like us start to realize over time that no doubt there's the useful idiots, and there are people who actually almost don't have an animus. They don't have, sort of an internal monologue, and they don't actually think about things. As we joke, they can't imagine the apple. that idea. But there are definitely people who are evil, and there are people who are malevolent and mendacious. And to be honest with you, even as a Catholic, I find it hard to actually find forgiveness in my heart, because these individuals who are choosing to ruin our world and choosing to inflict malevolence on us and degrade our lives in every conceivable fashion. And they think nothing of unleashing their monstrosities on our relatives and our children. They will happily misguide and conscript any soul that they come across. And I have to say, I've become of the view that forgiveness is something that they should be asking from God, not from me. And I know that sounds a tad callous, but I would be a bad person if I lied to you and your audience. But that's how I feel about that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, this is something we were talking about right before you came in, and it's and it was tied up to kind of the title of the stream, The Art of Saying Goodbye. And one of the things that we're talking about is saying goodbye to the America that was, the one that we believed in, and realizing that it's over. And
there's certainly something to be said for that. So, sorry, Patriarch, I'll just to agree with you, I was just going to say there's a small part of it that has to very much accept things as they are and not as we wish them to be. Not that we should let go of our aspirations to be better, or that we should surrender an ambition for betterment or improvement. But in order to achieve that, whether it's within ourselves or our locality or our nation, we can't do that if we delude ourselves about the present circumstances. And I think that's quite true what you say.
Yes, absolutely. And the reason why we should say, or we're called to say goodbye to these things, is so that we can live again, basically, which is a theme that I was talking about on earlier. So the reason why it's important to say goodbye to America or Australia or whatever those countries used to be, recognizing that it's, transformed into something else, is so that we can, and even in our own personal lives, is so that we can live today, right? And what that means is being able to shoulder the load, to find our responsibility in the here and now instead of chasing ghosts.
Yeah.
And
totally.
with the and what I was saying right before you came on is the obligation to forgive those who are perceptively evil, and sort of attaching that to kind of the American regime or Australian regime or whatever. Right before I did this stream, I was listening to something which was making a distinction between the public and the private enemy. So the scriptures say, Jesus says, turn the other cheek, forgive your enemy. And the word that they use there in that specific term is like a personal enemy, like someone who's wronged you in your own life, like a guy who, whatever, maybe they stole from you, maybe they were a jerk or whatever. Being able to turn the other cheek in our own personal lives against those people, I think, is something that we can manage, not holding resentment onto these individuals in our own lives, partially for our own sake and also for theirs, kill them with kindness. And then also just holding on to stuff and being bitter in your own soul is like, very damaging. And I think anyone would agree with that.
Sorry, go on. No, you go.
Now with the public enemy, so this, insert your favorite globalist here, right? They are very much, there's a distinction there between the public and the private enemy. And the public enemy, there may be a time where they deserve the noose, right? Or the guillotine or whatever.
Hypothetically speaking, of course.
In Minecraft, hypothetically speaking, but they deserve it. And for the sake of everybody, it is just and proper that they meet their end, let us say. But I think the difference there is that even though we're executing justice, we're administering justice, we're the
conduit of justice, you might say.
We're the conduit of justice. We are doing the right thing for the sake of everybody, and it's not nice. In your heart, you still hope that maybe they'll not be in the hot place, let us say.
Yeah, no. I get that. Yeah.
So even if, I had like Joseph Stalin or like Mao Zedong here, and I was like, all right, you're an evil bastard, and you deserve the end, but hey, I in my own heart, and I might not necessarily even like speak this publicly, I actually hope that in some small way they can be redeemed in the hereafter, right? And I think that is a mindset that we can, and I think it probably should embrace.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I mean, I haven't said it recently, but I mean, one thing that I have said over the last, I actually got a feeling it's probably between the discussions that we've had, because I think your channel might have been the first one you kindly invited me after I was on with AA. What would be now nearly 2 years ago.
The farming. Yep.
We talked about the farming one. And I think between then and now, I've at the times reiterated the idea that we need to sort of look into ourselves and find the best or cultivate the best iteration of ourselves as individuals. And we need to try and find within us the minerals and the capacity to endure what we are going through and what is yet to come, and that we have to steel ourselves for the worst possible outcomes, and that means facing some of the worst evils imaginable to the human mind, and probably the sufferance that we went through with the coup could be as much a portent as it is a precursor to what's to come. We will find out, I suppose, in the next couple of years. But that in itself was a horrible thing that many of us had to go through one way or another. And we have to find that part in ourselves to endure that and to push through it and to not succumb to it. But at the same time, we have to ensure that we don't become the devils that we we swear that we're going to slay.
Mm.
If we debase ourselves and become the demons that we swear to fight, then we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves spiritually and psychologically, and our soul goes to dark places. And we always have to safeguard against that, because in the end, if we do care about ourselves and love ourselves, and if we love other people and those other people that we love us, then by us falling into that sort of vortex of evil and sin condemns us. So we should always be cognizant of that, I think. And the second thing is, this is where I think people who adhere to Christian principles, and I don't mean that in like a televangelist sense, I mean that in an authentic way, in which like you or myself or, you know, Prude or other guys in our sphere would conceive of that idea, right? Is that I think there's a lot that can be drawn from, say, Stoic philosophy, without just being a doormat as well. And I think one of my favorite lines, I think, might be from Epictetus, where he says that if you find yourself in an intolerable circumstance, I'm paraphrasing. If you find yourself within an intolerable circumstance, it's not that you have to be in a different place. You actually have to become a different person.
Yeah.
You have to, and I consider that, or I interpret that as being, it is your prerogative and your responsibility to find that or cultivate that iteration of you that can tolerate these circumstances. And if that vice tightens, you must simply just become stronger. You must simply attain or build a thicker skin. You have to find it within yourself to stand tall when everyone else around you starts to flake, because these times won't get easier. They will not get necessarily better, certainly not in the short term. The evil that ensconces our societies won't just dissipate into the sea tomorrow. They are clear and present influences in our lives, and if we become browbeaten by them and defeated, well, then what's the point of any of it? And so
Absolutely.
I think there's this interesting interplay between, you might say, the Christian notions of virtue, of behavior, of you know, like a philosophical guiding light as to how one should live, and also the Stoics, which obviously mostly predate Christianity. I think if one sort of bounces between the two, you sort of find a very good place to, in order for one to moor themselves, and then from there develop the spiritual and the intellectual you know, guidance to go in that direction, to persevere with the things that people like us have to persevere with. The last point I just wanted to make quickly, because you sort of said like the goodbye thing, is that, and we see this, I know we joke about boomers a lot in our sphere, and you know,
Yeah.
Gen Xers and Darias and this
The
sort of
eternal
stuff.
boomer. Yeah.
The eternal boomer. But it's so true that if we are deluded as to the situation in which we find ourselves, it actually, it restrains and it sort of suffocates our ability to act in the right way, or even in the best way, to circumstances which we find ourselves. And this is where I think like boomers have such a problem, is that there would be so many, I mean, I suppose men and women, but particularly men, who find themselves in this predicament of, they see the world around them crumbling. The things that they took for granted when, say, your dads and uncles or my dads and uncles were our age, that just simply can't be taken for granted anymore. The things that they cherished and enshrined have just been completely, you know, obliterated by recognition. And the things that were, you might say, quietly understood amongst adults back then can almost hardly be whispered amongst friends now, if you get my point. I'm sort of speaking a little bit in code, but you get what I mean. The presumptions of society, which were, you might say, commonly understood, are very, very rarely understood by even a minority of people today, or at least those people are hardly able to speak it beyond a whisper. And they're frustrated. They know something's wrong, but because they might adhere to principles of, say, egalitarianism or liberalism, or they believe in this sort of Anglo-American conception of freedom, or that they have bought into the democracy idea and have bought the what do we call it, like, you know, like the post-war narrative, or the post 45 narrative and whatever, you know, the birth of the modern mythos of the modern world, and they can't separate one from the other. They can't compartmentalize these ideas. They're sort of all fastened together by like this chain of delusion. It actually inhibits their ability to be able to act accordingly. They can't think their way through it because they're
Yes.
weighed down by these presumptions and these preconceived ideas and these beliefs that actually aren't true anymore. And I think that's where people like us have more, I use the word liberty lightly, but like in this context, we have the liberty to be able to think outside of these parameters. And we can then come to discussions and debates and conclusions and ideas as to how to diagnose and to solve these problems that have arisen. And sometimes, and again, this is something I actually have said in the past, not often, but there are numbers of generations that occur through history that they may kick and writhe and scream and whine and cry and whatever. We might call it cope and seething, right?
Yeah.
But hell or high water, that people or that bracket of generations, because there might be sort of 2 or 3 generations in conjunction, because let's face it, for us as boomers, X's and millennials, like that's the bracket, right, that is going to be made to say goodbye to the world as they've known it, or the world that they understood or knew.
Yeah.
And you know, every so often in history, and you got to think, in World War II, it was the greatest generation and their parents who were thrown into the maelstrom of history and had to say goodbye to the world that they grew up and understood. And this is sort of our challenge that's facing us today, is that we are going to have to say goodbye to the world as we know it. And something else will arise in the next 15, 20 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 30 years. We don't know how long this process will take. And the more able one is to accept that process and accept one's place in history, you then are on, you might say, you throw off that millstone, that burden of being suffocated from being able to act accordingly, and then you can act accordingly. You know, like for instance, the aristocrats who were alive in the late 1700s had to say goodbye to the Ancien regime and had to live in a post-revolutionary France. The Romans, who were the legionnaires and the centurions guarding Rome as it was crumbling, that generation as well. Like, these things are cyclical, you know. The last Assyrians who held Nineveh and Ashur at the collapse of the Bronze Age, when, you know, the Persians were rising up, are that generation. You know, like, they're not the same, but they rhyme. History does rhyme often. And we are, in my opinion, kind of reflective of that.
I agree. And I think that, yeah, to quote Jay Burden, I agree.
I agree.
I agree. Yeah. I think that's actually a very good addendum to sort of what I was saying earlier on before you came on the stream. So I was trying to anthropologize this concept and talk about sort of start inward and then work out, right? So starting inward in our own lives, recognizing sort of, you know, saying goodbye as sort of a necessary thing and how to do that. And then I sort of touched on the wider scope, right? Sort of saying goodbye to America, saying goodbye to the world as we knew it. And then you just came in right now and then like put a really nice capstone right on the end of it. That was excellent. And that's absolutely the important, why this is, why it's important to know how to let go of things, right? So that, you know, for you and me growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, like, yeah, it was pretty good. And our conception of, and, you know, the ball might have started rolling a lot earlier, of course, you know, the rot might have set in quite a time before, certainly. But at the time living in it, life was pretty good. And what we thought our countries were was pretty good. And living under them was pretty good. And then you just realize that no, it's not that way anymore. And I think, sort of like what you mentioned, you and I are kind of like the last generation who kind of was able to get a sniff of what the old America or the old Australia used to be.
The Old West, we might say.
Yeah. The Old West used to be, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
And we have to let go of it.
Correct. And this is
so
where
that
I think
we can live and build something better. And that's true in our own personal lives. And it's also true on a national level.
Correct. And a community level and everything else. And this is where I think as well. And I mean, I make a point of not trying to, shit on Zoomers as well. But this is where I think there is such, even though we're quite close in proximity and we're both generations that have lived amongst technology and largely grown up with computers and technology and whatever, I think this is where philosophically millennials or Gen Ys and Zoomers do diverge, is that, we were born early enough. If we didn't actually see that old world itself, or we didn't quite live in it, we lived around people who did. Whereas I think because the Gen Zs, exactly, and so like the Zoomers were born like a bit late, so that by the time they actually reached, like cognizant childhood or teen years, like most of the war veterans had died, most of the survivors of the Great Depression had died, progressivism had been turned a few more notches further forward than when we were kids, you might say. And so that those years, that sort of decade or decade and a half, is actually a huge transition period that defines the difference between us and them. Just if I may, Patriarch, I want to make one point about the idea of attachment and letting go, is that I agree with what I've said previously and with what you're saying, but about the idea of sentiment as well. And this is why, like, for instance, I reject like the Tate types. And I said this, I think Settlers Lament did a stream about Tate, and I sort of gave my 2 cents about this. And this is where I don't think delving into materialism and hedonism is an option, and detachment's an option. Is that ultimately something has to mean something enough to someone that they are willing to fight for it and to sacrifice for it, and exactly what famous Settlers Lament. And even if it means building from the ashes, one must love themselves or their family, their community, their identity, their heritage, all those things, because otherwise you'd just throw your arms up and say, it's too much, it's too heavy, I'll just capitulate. And there has to be like this sort of dynamic between letting go of what's rotten and letting go of the delusion, but also holding something close enough to your heart that it is worth enough to fight for. And that, I made the analogy about the Roman legionnaires guarding the walls of Rome during the collapse. There was enough love for Rome that when they were presented with their last threat, which was Attila the Hun, the Romans were able to field one more army, and they sent it into Gaul, and that was under the general Flavius Aetius. And the Romans, despite being in a dilapidated state and being, already the Western Empire was crumbling, you got to think that the West Roman army was made up of Franks and Visigoths and this ragtag collection of allies, alongside a few Roman legions, which the Romans still commanded. And they pushed Attila out of Gaul. They kept the Christian West itself, even if it was crumbling. Those men loved the idea enough to still fight for it at the last gasp. And maybe we are the legionnaires staving off Attila, if you get the analogy. And look what happened afterwards. Like, yes, West Rome did collapse, but what sprouted from that? We had Francia, we had the Spanish Reconquista, we had Anglo-Saxon England, which arose out of the ashes of West Rome, and they were people who built from the ashes anew, and sort of, although they forged kind of new identities in the process, they still had a very, very strong mooring to what had come before. And we're all, I suppose we're all pretty religious people in this sphere, and you might appreciate this analogy, Patriarch, but one that I do use commonly is that I think up until maybe 2015 or 16 or even 2018, probably we thought we can save this building. We might be able to just, sand down the wood and, new coat of lacquer and repaint it and, redo the buttressing and, save this thing that is the West. But there comes a time where we have to realize a building is so badly white-anted that if we're sitting in the pews and the roof collapses on us, it is actually over. Because ideas live in the hearts and minds of people ultimately, and hope lives within the souls of people. And that maybe what's actually incumbent upon us, and this is maybe where like the Gen Xers and Gen Ys and Zoomers might break from the boomers in this regard, is that if we imagine it to be like a monastery or a cathedral or even a church, a humble church, what we have to do is we have to take out the altar and we have to take out the tabernacle and we have to remove the crucifixes off the walls and we have to painstakingly take out all the stained glass windows and the iconography very carefully, piece by piece, with a sacrosanct carefulness, if you get my meaning. And we have to let that building collapse, whether it burns by fire or whether it just implodes in on itself. And the white ants have to go the way of the building because it actually can't be saved. And then we have to get those valuable things, which are, you might say, the foundation stones of Western civilization. They are the minerals that make it what it is. And then if we build a new structure built in the image of the old, but anew, and then we put the stained glass windows back, we put the altar, place it where it belongs in the new church, and we put the tabernacle behind the altar, and we forge new pews in the new building, and we start again. And I think that's an important part of the process of saying goodbye to it, but loving it enough to preserve what's actually valuable. And that's, people might say that an analogy is bullshit. Maybe it is, but that's how in my mind, it makes sense.
I was just going to say, I think that's actually a beautiful metaphor. That is in essence what we're trying to do. And not, again, the personal reflects the collective to a certain extent. So even in our own lives, taking what was good and then trying to carry it forward and learn from it. But that analogy with the church and sort of the society we're living in is this decrepit, white-anted, church, which is, crumbling and there's no saving it. But then taking the stained glass and the altar and the icons and the vestments, the holy gifts, and taking it out, allowing that thing to crumble, and then building a new thing. And it's going to be different, obviously, but with the heart of what made the old system great, I think is that's a very good analogy. I see we got another super chat here from Prince of Parma for 35 South African rents. The imprecatory Psalms are in the Bible for a reason. Psalm 149 comes to mind on the topic. So this is sort of what we were talking about earlier in terms of forgiveness. Yes. The imprecatory Psalms are a real thing. And I'll just say in my own life, when I pray, and I do pray for my country and the leadership, and I always add a caveat to it, which is of an imprecatory nature, which is, Lord, may our leaders repent from their wickedness and turn towards you, or otherwise be cast down by mighty men of God who love you and your word. So that's the thing. So it's, you hope that they turn, but if they don't, bring on the fire and brimstone. Because,
so be it, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. So be it. Yeah. So be it.
Just if I may clarify my position, because maybe I may have been misunderstood. I'm not saying don't forgive them. I was merely expressing two things: that I myself personally find it hard, and the second thing is that. What was the second thing? That I myself find it hard, obviously, and that it's a complicated question, and that it's not easy to come to a judgment upon it, and that if anyone listening is conflicted, you have a right to feel conflicted. I'm not saying necessarily don't forgive them. Having forgiveness in one's heart is an important trait, particularly amongst those who are genuinely contrite. But I was just merely expressing that living in the day and age that we are, it's perfectly reasonable to feel in conflict about notions of forgiveness. Indeed, we are commanded to do so, as others have rightly said in the chat. It's just again, I don't want to lie to people. I'm just telling you what's in my heart. So I just want to make that distinction clear. I wasn't giving you an instruction like don't forgive people. It's like, I know I know I meme about that scene from Rome with the crucifixes and everything.
Yeah.
But, like that is obviously a joke.
Yeah, no, we get it, and it's taken in good spirit, definitely. Well, man,
Correct.
we're out of comments here. We've reached the end of the stream. Yeah, I'm glad you jumped in because I was done. I'm basically going through comments at 45 minutes, and I see that we got about another hour out of it, which makes me happy. So I was like, I wish someone would jump in and. The bat signal went out and Furious Pertinax ready for duty.
I figured that. Well, also because I know we've chatted a couple of times about potentially doing something again. It just hasn't, come to pass. And it just so happens as well that, like your late schedule fits in with my morning. So I actually do. I actually have to head out myself. I've got to jump out for family lunch soon. But it just was and also being a sad day too. Like, usually weekends are more free. So I thought, no, you know what? If I get a chance, even if it's 20 minutes, I want to jump on Mr. Patriarch. He's a good buddy of mine, and I hope I managed to contribute something worthwhile. And I mean, I always and like I said, because I think we're a similar generation, because you've had experience with South Africa, and South Africa and Australia have had very similar. You might say the trajectories are different, but the cultures aren't that dissimilar. There's a reason why Aussies like traveling to South Africa, and I think there's a good reason why South Africans, when they leave South Africa, like to come to Australia. I think we share a strong kinship in that regard. So talking, I find between us two is always a worthwhile task. So thank you for kindly having me on for a few minutes. Much appreciated.
Absolutely, and I'll have to get back to you. Some other time and we can find out another stream. So someone was commenting earlier, like, hey, do you do politics anymore? And I'm like, yes, I do. But I just have to wait for the right moment, the right guest, the right inspiration. And so I'm sure Marcus and I can come up with something good to talk about here before too long. So as for all the listeners, thanks.
Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for, boys. we might end up talking about the fucking war in Angola.
Indeed. So
thank you, Patriarch. I'll leave you to it, friend. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time. Patriarch.